when the bright splotches finally cleared from my eyes. I looked up to see Kay's colorless face looking down at me. As usual, I said the first ridiculous thing that came to mind. Kay, your eyes are popping out of your head like a fish. He marked you. Oh, Zoe, you have the outlining of that thing on your forehead. Then she pressed a shaking hand against her white lips, unsuccessfully trying to hold back a sob. I sat up and coughed. I had a killer headache, and I rubbed at the spot right between my eyes. It stung as if a wasp bit me and radiated pain down around my eyes. All the way across my cheekbones. I felt like I might puke. Zoe! Kay was really crying now, and had to speak between wet little hiccups. Oh, my God! That guy was a tracker! A vampire tracker! Kay. I blinked hard, trying to clear the pain from my head. Stop crying. You know I hate it when you cry. I reached out to attempt a comforting pat on her shoulders, and she automatically cringed and moved away from me. I can't believe it. She actually cringed, like she was afraid of me. She must have seen the hurt in my eyes because she instantly started a string of breathless K-babble. Oh my God, Zoe! What are we going to do? You can't go to that place. You can't be one of those things. This can't be happening. Who am I supposed to go to all of our football games with now? I noticed that all during her tirade, she didn't once move any closer to me. I clamped down on the sick, hurt feeling inside that threatened to make me burst into tears. My eyes dried instantly. I was good at hiding tears. I should be. I'd had 3 years to get good at it. It's okay. I'll figure it out. It's probably some bizarre mistake, I lied. I wasn't really talking. I was just making words come out of my mouth. Still grimacing at the pain in my head, I stood up. Looking around, I felt a small measure of relief that Kay and I were the only ones in the math hall. And then I had to choke back what I knew was hysterical laughter. Had I not been totally psycho about the geometry test from hell scheduled for tomorrow, and had run back to my locker to get my book so I could attempt to obsessively and pointlessly study tonight, the tracker would have found me standing in front of the school with the majority of the 1,300 kids who went to Broken Arrow South Intermediate High School, waiting for my stupid Barbie clone sister, I like to smugly call the big yellow limos. I have a car, but standing around with the less fortunate who have a ride standing around with the less fortunate who have to ride the buses in a time-honored tradition, not to mention an excellent way to check out who's hitting on who. As it was, there was only one other kid in the math hall, a thin dork with messed up teeth, which I could unfortunately see too much of because he was standing there with his mouth open staring at me like I'd just given birth to a litter of flying pigs. I coughed again, this time a really wet, disgusting cough. The dork made a squeaky little sound and scuttled down the hall to Mrs. Day's room, clutching a flat board to his bony chest. Guess the chess club had changed its meeting time to Mondays after school. Do vampires play chess? Were there vampire dorks? How about Barbie-like vampire cheerleaders? Did any vampires play in the band? Were the vampire emos with their guy wearing girl pants weirdness and those awful bangs that cover half their faces? Or were they all those freaky goth kids who didn't like to bathe much? Was I going to turn into a goth kid? Or worse, an emo? I didn't particularly like wearing black, at least not exclusively, and I wasn't feeling a sudden and unfortunate aversion to soap and water. Nor did I have an obsessive desire to change my hairstyle and wear too much eyeliner. All this whirled around my mind, while I felt another little hysterical bubble of laughter try to escape from my throat, and was almost thankful when it came out as a cough instead. Zoe, are you okay? Kayla's voice sounded too high, like someone pinching her, and she'd taken another step away from me. I sighed, and felt my first sliver of anger. It wasn't like I'd asked for this. Kay and I had been best friends since 3rd grade, and now she was looking at me like I'd turned into a monster. Kayla, it's just me. The same me I was 2 seconds ago, and 2 hours ago, and 2 days ago. I made a flustered gesture toward my throbbing head. This doesn't change who I am. Kay's eyes teared up again, but thankfully her cell phone started singing Madonna's Material Girl. Automatically, she glanced at the caller ID, and I could tell by her rabbit in the headlights expression that it was her boyfriend, Jared. Go on, I said in a flat, tired voice. Ride home with him. Her look of relief was like a slap in my face. Call me later? She threw over her shoulder as she beat a hasty retreat out the side door. I watched her rush across the east lawn to the parking lot. I could see that she had her cell phone smashed to her ear and was talking in an animated little burst to Jared. I'm sure she was already telling him that I was turning into a monster. The problem, of course, was that turning into a monster was the brighter of my two choices. Choice number one, I turn into a vampire, which equals a monster in just about any human's mind. Choice number two, my body rejects the change, and I die. Forever. So the good news is that I wouldn't have to take that geometry test tomorrow. The bad news, that I'd have to move into the House of Night, a private boarding school in Tulsa's Midtown, known by all my friends as a vampire finishing school, where I'd spend the next 4 years going through bizarre and unnameable physical changes, as well as a total permanent life shake-up. And that's only the whole process. That's only if the whole process didn't kill me. Great. I didn't want to either. I just wanted to attempt to be normal, despite the burden of my mega-conservative parents, my troll-like younger brother, and my oh-so-perfect older sister. I wanted to pass geometry. I wanted to keep up my grades so that I could get accepted to a veterinary college at OSU and get out of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. But most of all, I wanted to fit in, at least at school. Home had been hopeless, so all I was left with were my friends and my life away from my family. Now, that was being taken away from me too. I rubbed my forehead and then messed with my hair until it semi-covered my eyes. With a little luck, the mark had appeared above them. Keeping my head ducked down, like I was fascinated with the goo that had somehow formed in my purse, I hurried toward the door that led to the student parking lot. But I stopped short of the going outside, through the side-by-side windows in the institutional-looking outdoors. I could see Heath. Girls flocked around him, posing and flipping their hair, while guys revved ridiculously big pickup trucks and tried, but mostly failed, to look cool. Doesn't it figure that I would choose that to be attracted to? No, to be fair to myself, I should remember that Heath used to be incredibly sweet, and even now he had his moments, mostly when he bothered to be sober. High-pitched girls' giggles flitted to me across the parking lot. Great. Kathy Richer, the biggest hoe in the school, was pretending to smack Heath. Even from where I was standing, it was obvious she thought hitting him was some kind of mating routine. As usual, clueless Heath was just standing there grinning. Well, hell, my day wasn't going to get any better. And there sat my robin's egg blue 1966 Volkswagen Bug right in the middle of them. No, I couldn't go out there. I couldn't walk to the middle of them with this thing on my forehead. I'd never be able to part of them again. I'd never be able to be a part of them again. I always knew too well what they do. I remember the last kid a tracker had chosen at SIHS. It happened at the beginning of the last school year. The tracker had come before school started and targeted the kid as he was walking to his first hour. I didn't see the tracker, but I did see the kid afterwards, just for a second, after he dropped his books and ran out of the building, his new mark glowing on his pale forehead and tears washing down his 2 white cheeks. I never forgot how crowded the halls had been that morning, and how everyone had backed away from him like he was the plague, as he rushed to escape out the front doors of the school. I had been one of the kids who had backed out of his way and stared, even though I felt sorry for him. I just hadn't wanted to be labeled as the one girl who's friends with those freaks. Sort of ironic now, isn't it? Instead of going to my car, I headed for the nearest restroom, which was thankfully empty. There were 3 stalls. Yes, I double-checked each for feet. One on On one wall were two sinks over which hung two medium-sized mirrors. Across from the sinks, the opposite wall was covered with huge mirrors that ledge below it that had a ledge below it for holding brushes and makeup and whatnot. I put my purse and geometry book on the ledge, took a deep breath, and in one motion lifted my head and brushed my hair back. It was like staring into the face of a familiar stranger. You know the person you see in the crowd and swear you know, but you don't really know? Now that was me, the familiar stranger. She had my eyes, that were the same hazel color that could never decide if they wanted to be green or brown, but my eyes had never been that big and round, or had they? She had my hair, long and straight, and almost as dark as my grandma's had been before hers had begun to turn silver. The stranger had my high cheekbones, long, strong nose, and wide mouth, more features from my grandma and her Cherokee ancestors. But my face had never been that pale. It had always been olivish, much darker skinned than anyone else in my family. But maybe it wasn't that my skin was suddenly so white. Maybe it just looked pale in comparison to the blue outline of the crescent moon that was perfectly positioned in the middle of my forehead. Or maybe it was the horrid fluorescent lights. I hoped it was the lighting. I stared at the exotic-looking tattoo. Mixing with my strong Cherokee features, it seemed to brand me like a mark of a wildness, as if belonging to an ancient times when the world was bigger, more barbaric. From this day on, my life would never be the same. For a moment, just an instant, I forgot about the horror of not belonging, and felt a shocking burst of pleasure, while deep inside of me the blood of my grandmother's people rejoiced. End of chapter 1.